Showing another wet fly from Ray Bergman's Trout. This is the Fishhawk. I chose this pattern because it's got a couple of unique features to it. The body is just a gold tinsel body with a brown floss rib on it, as well as the wing has a couple of cheeks in this, or it depends on the recipe. Some people will call those just eyes. A couple of jungle cock nails in there for eyes. And a lot of the wet flies don't have the jungle cock in them. I did a video on the Dr. Burke about a year ago, I think it was, and it also has some jungle cock in the wing. And I just find that pretty handsome. It's pretty nice. I like the contrast to it. I like the jungle cock. Sometimes gives the flies kind of a target in the water. Overall, it just looks really nice. So that's the Fishhawk. And I'll get started tying. I'm going to start the Fishhawk with my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399 in a size 6, the standard wet fly hook. I'm going to go ahead and debarb the hook. The Fishhawk has a tinsel body with a floss rib on it, so I don't have to worry about darkening up any floss. I'm going to start the fly with a 6/0 Danville in black. I've already waxed my thread. I'm going to attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook and advance my thread down to the end of the shank. That's going to be right between the point of the hook and the barb. Here I'm going to tie in the tail. There is no tip on this, but there is a tail. The tail is some mottled turkey. And I have a slip from one feather that I will match up with the other feather. To make the tail. I get those tips even. I'll then check my width. Both of them should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 barbs. 3 maybe. 3's a little thin. 4 or 5. The one on my side, as this would sit on the hook, the one on my side has just 1 extra barb to it. So I will put my bodkin in here, separate that out, and peel that out. Again, making certain that those tips are even. And then I can measure this. I want this to be, you could do a shank length if you want. I think that's a little short. I usually will go from behind the eye of the hook to almost to the bend. This time I'm going to go just right to the bend there. Secure that with a few wraps, and I'll trim this the length of the body. Now the Fishhawk has, as I mentioned, a gold tinsel body and a brown floss rib. So the tinsel that I'm using is a Danville silver and gold Mylar tinsel. This is a size 14. And the rib is, I'm using a 4-strand Danville rayon in brown. I'm going to tie that rib in first. In order to facilitate this being a nice gold body, I'm going to tie the tinsel in up front here and do a double layer of tinsel. So at this point, I'm going to advance my thread forward, collecting the rest of that floss and turkey material down to the shank of the hook. Take my gold tinsel. I'm going to trim off the end of this here. I want to trim this at a sharp angle like this. Maybe you might see that better if I do the gold side here. I just want that at a sharp angle like that because I'm going to tie this in with the gold side up. And that sharp angle gives me just a little bit of a tip there that I can wind in. It's not going to bulk anything up. And then I can just start wrapping in that tinsel. Now, I'm not going to put any glue on this. Normally, I might put some head cement on there to help secure that tinsel. But since I have the rib that's going to be over it, I'm not going to be that concerned and put some head cement on there. I'm just going to wrap this down in a nice edge-to-edge wrap, double layer, going all the way down to the tail and back, and then I'll put in my rib. The rib, you'll notice when I put that in, I'm going to twist that up so that it is nice and narrow. And I forgot to mention that the floss that I'm using for that rib is just 2 strands of that 4-strand floss. Wraps in there of the rib. Trim that away, clean this up a little bit. I'm ready for the throat. Throat on our Fishhawk is just brown hackle. The wing is turkey as well as 2 jungle cock eyes on this. I'm using some brown schlappen for the throat. I've already selected some barbs from a feather. I'm going to set this up underneath. Pinch wrap from underneath there. Take your time with it. Sometimes they separate nice and easy, and sometimes those excess barbs get kind of mixed up a little bit. Smooth this area off, and now I'll tie in my wings. Wing is going to be the same turkey, so I'll peel off my slip from one side. I'll match that up with the slip from the other side. Peel that off. I want these to be at least the gap of the hook, maybe even a little bit more, because this turkey has a real sharp taper to it. You can see The one on my side's a little wider. So I'm going to peel out a couple barbs here, 3. Keep my tips nice and even there. To set this up, I want the tips to go about halfway down the tail. Four or 5 wraps to secure that in. Then we'll take a look at our wing. That went on pretty well. Trim away the excess. Now before I smooth this area off here, as I mentioned, the Fishhawk has some jungle cock cheeks on it, or eyes, depending on the recipe. These wet flies that use some of the jungle cock, they're a great use for some of the smaller eyes that you're going to get off of the lower portion of your cape. And these, maybe you could use some of these on a wet fly that's a little bit bigger. Generally, the smaller ones right in here, or even if you go, this is a size 6 hook. If I were to go to a 8 or 10, then I'd be looking at even some of these smaller ones. So I've already prepped these, and I will tie in the one on your side first. I'm just going to put that in the same angle as the wing, securing that down right at the very base, the white portion of that eye. Trim away the excess. You want to be careful when you're doing this that you're not pulling and tugging on your thread a lot, because these eyes, you can very easily get those out of alignment. When we finish the head off here, it will finish securing these eyes in where we want them. Take your time with this. I'm not really even pulling on my thread much. I'm just getting some wraps over that to get that nail right where I want it. Make certain my other one's where I want it. Trim away the excess. See right there, I just moved that nail. Now, I'll brace the nails and the wing very carefully so that I'm not moving them. I'll come down behind the eye of the hook and start shaping the head. This is where we really bind in the butt ends of those jungle cock feathers, shaping the head and securing all of that down. You don't want to get too many thread wraps in there, so take a little care. Try and get everything covered up. But remember, we're going to put some black lacquer on this, so you got just a little bit of a white material or something sticking out there, then may not end up being that big of a deal, because when you put the black lacquer on there, it'll cover it up as well. Plus the fact you can use your whip finish to help cover things up and finish off the head. Trim away my thread, my whip finish, and our Fishhawk is done. Almost, actually. I've got some head cement I'm going to put here on both sides just a little bit to soak down in there. That's just going to soak into the threads and solidify that head, help protect it. Now I'll come back in a moment and I'll put a couple layers of black lacquer on that to finish off Fishhawk. Tail ended up just a tad long, but I think it'll work with that wing. So a handsome little fly, lots of nice earth tones to it and everything. I kind of like the gold body and the floss rib on this. There's a number of flies, wet flies, that have floss ribs like this, and I always find them kind of interesting. If I can get that to curve just a little bit more. There you go. So that is the Fishhawk. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for joining me at Devise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.